These objections are spontaneous. They are grassroots. When you go to a homeowner who's barely holding on barely to their homes, or they're underwater on their homes, or barely holding on to their jobs, and you increase their tax bill because you want to take what they have left in their bank account and give it to a complete stranger who happens to work for the local, state, or federal government, rather than keep it to pay for your own home and clothing and food for your own family, they object. They don't need to be told to object. They object. They work for what they have, and they'd like to keep more of it. This isn't a rich versus middle class, rich versus poor, poor versus middle class. This is the American taxpayer saying, enough already. Don't hand us the Marxist claptrap, the socialist bullcrap. We don't want to hear it anymore. We played along, and look where we are. Damn near destitute. We don't know what our future's going to hold. We're scared to death about what's going to happen with our kids and their future. We're scared to death that this society's going to collapse, and your answer's the same damn thing. Even though it doesn't work, it's never worked. It cannot work. But I wanted you to hear this, because this is what their brainiacs, so to speak, keep coming up with. Now, it's the same chorus, whether it's economics or race. So we'll move right to their next issue, race. Can I ask you a question that I've asked before? If our society is so racist, why do so many people of different color, different backgrounds, different heritages pour over our borders? Why do they want to come here? Why do people from Latin America want to come here? People from Africa want to come here? People from the Caribbean want to come here? People from Asia want to come here? What are you coming here for? People from the Middle East? We are a racist, backward society. That's what the libs keep telling us. Yet we can't keep anybody the hell out of here. Gee, I wonder what that's all about. I'll tell you what. We're not a racist society. There, I said it. And for some reason, that's going to be considered controversial. Does that mean there aren't some racists in our country? Of course not. That would be stupid. I'm sure there are many. But not the vast majority of the population. The vast majority of Americans, black, white, brown, yellow, red, polka dot, just want to get along. They want to live their lives. They don't want to push people around. They just want to get along. We're a very, very tolerant society. We are tolerant of tall people and short people. We are tolerant of skinny people and fat people. We are tolerant of all kinds of colors of people. We're tolerant of every kind of religion of people, or no religion. And you damn well know it. And yet these politicians want to keep telling us otherwise. Why? Why do they want to keep lying about us, the American people? Why? Because it's to their benefit to balkanize this society, to divide and conquer so they can fill the gaps. You look through history, you look around the world today. Could our kind of society, Christian, Jew, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, 1,000 other kinds of religions and denominations, and 1,000 types of non-religions and denominations that pray or don't pray to who knows what. Do you think this kind of society could exist in the Middle East? Do you think this kind of society could exist in North Africa? Do you think this kind of society could exist in China or anywhere else on the face of the earth? And yet we are constantly told to berate ourselves, to punish ourselves. We're constantly told to look at slavery and segregation when we're trying to get past it. They keep trying to drag us back and drag us back. Why? Because they have contempt for us, regardless of our color and our sex and our religion. We believe in the American dream, but our politicians apparently do not. We have an Attorney General of the United States who should be resigning. He should have resigned already. But he won't, and there'll be no pressure for him to do so. He is a political hack. He is a leftist. His law firm represented many of the terrorist detainees at Guantanamo Bay. He has hired and surrounded himself with among the most radical lawyers that exist in this nation. He has politicized his litigation decisions. And I tell you, as somebody who was chief of staff to an attorney general, I've never seen anything like this, and nobody's ever gotten away with anything like this. Now, he's been asked about that new Black Panther case where you can see it on video, where people are being intimidated. And his Civil Rights Division, so-called, dropped the case. They were too busy chasing down the governor of Arizona, I guess. And I'm going to tell you why they dropped the case. Because of race. There is a deep-held belief on the left that racism can only go one way. This new Black Panther Party is as racist as it gets. And our United States Justice Department, our Attorney General of the United States, look the other way. I want you to hear Holder. He is responding to Congressman John Culbertson of Texas. I want you to hear him get on his high horse, talking about the 1960s, what took place in the 1960s, which was horrendous, but has absolutely nothing to do with his refusal to pursue civil rights violations today. Because if we're stuck in the 1960s and civil rights violations today are not worth pursuing, why do we have a Civil Rights Division, I wonder? Here's Holder today. Cut 1, go.
I would hope that this committee will pursue in greater detail and more depth, and perhaps, Mr. Chairman, in a separate hearing, these very, very serious allegations of a pattern of behavior to the Department of Justice, sworn testimony that indicates there's a pattern of behavior of refusing to enforce the laws in a racially neutral manner, ignoring the voter intimidation in Pima County, Arizona, ignoring voter intimidation in Philadelphia, the Ike Brown case where attorneys in the department were harassed. We've got sworn testimony. And the reason it's relevant, if I could, in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, point out that the Department of Justice is asking for a $145 million increase in the Civil Rights Division funding for this year, Mr. Chairman, and that includes funding for 815 staff positions. That's a 14% increase in manpower and an 18% boost in spending. I want to make sure American taxpayers are getting their money's worth, Mr. Chairman, that money's being spent in pursuit of cases in a absolutely blind and racially neutral manner, no matter who it is. If they're intimidating voters, if the voter registration rolls, that's another question, Mr. Chairman. Section 8 of the National Voter Registration Act, we've got sworn allegations that it's not being enforced. The states are being allowed to keep garbage lists, and the DOJ is charged with cleaning up those lists. I think it's worth very careful inquiry, Mr. Chairman, to determine whether or not these out. Mr. Fattah says it's false. We've got sworn testimony, it's true. We need to pursue that in great detail.
Well, if I could...
Let's stop right there. Did you know about these massive increases in spending and staff in the Civil Rights Divisions? Massive increase in spending and staff. Are we having massive civil rights violations in this country? I haven't seen it reported, and I'm sure the liberal media would be telling us all about it. Are we ginning up that Civil Rights Division to go after states like Arizona? Is that it? But listen carefully to your Attorney General. Go ahead.
First, the people in the Black Panther case did not admit the guilt. They did not appear, and a default judgment was entered against them.
Right, that's the point.
Not contest liability.
But you said admit, that's an affirmative action.
But they did not contest it.
I think that the quote that you read from that gentleman, that this was the greatest affront in history.
That he'd ever seen.
I mean, that...
Personal opinion.
But, I mean, think about that. When you compare what people endured in the South in the 60s to try to get the right to vote for African Americans, and to compare what people were subjected to there to what happened in Philadelphia, which is inappropriate, it's certainly that, but to call that, to put it, describe it in those terms, I think does a great disservice to people who put their lives on the line, who risked all for my people. My wife's sister integrated the University of Alabama. When George Wallace stood in the door and said that she, as a state resident, could not attend the University of Alabama, Vivian Malone, who I'm proud to say was my sister-in-law, to compare that kind of courage, that kind of action, and to say that the Black Panther incident, wrong though it might be, somehow is greater in magnitude or is of greater concern to us historically, I think just flies in the face of history and in the facts. And I just want to assure again the American people that the allegations that somehow, some way, this Justice Department does things on the basis of race is simply false. It is simply false. Anybody who makes that contention is not telling the truth, is not familiar with the facts, or has a political agenda.
Well, sir, you're wrong. Your intervention in Arizona was all about race and all about pandering, and you damn well know it. Your department hasn't given a single credible explanation for dropping the new Black Panther case where there had been a default judgment. That is, they didn't defend. So what's the rationale? What's the rationale? Forget about all the histrionics here. What is the rationale? And he's right. What took place in the 1960s was disgusting. It truly was. But he has the power now as Attorney General of the United States to do what's right. Is he doing what's right? Now, why is he so massively expanding the Civil Rights Division, both in terms of staff and budget increases, if there's no historical comparison to what took place before? What's going on today in America that requires this? I mean, he can't have it both ways. A massive increase in his budget, a huge increase in staffing. What's it for? Is it the 1960s? You just said it's not. So what is it? I'm just curious. And we don't have an answer. And we'll never get an answer from this Attorney General who should have resigned long ago. And yes, you make a lot of decisions based on politics. I didn't know that the United States Attorney in New York was a former counsel to Chuck Schumer on the Senate Judiciary Committee, I believe. How the hell did that happen? Was he chosen because he was the best crime buster known to the Justice Department, or was he chosen because he was a Schumer guy? I'm sure that wasn't a political decision either. I'm not saying appointing U.S. attorneys doesn't have some aspect of politics in it, but let's not play games. I seem to recall that Attorney General Ashcroft's assistance and hiring practices and the White House's involvement, if there was any, in the appointment of U.S. attorneys was a subject. Oh, that was Gonzales, Attorney General Gonzales, I believe, excuse me. Remember all the brouhaha about that, and they had 7 or 8 or 9 of them who said they were fired because of politics? Well, I want to know how the U.S. attorney in New York got his job. Maybe he's a perfectly great guy. I have no reason to doubt that. That's not my point. There's a lot of perfectly great guys and gals who get their jobs from political influence. Great. But I thought that in and of itself was a problem. Apparently not for this administration. But he never answers the question, does he? We don't need history lessons from Eric Holder. John Lewis can give a better history lesson on what happened in the South. His politics aside, he was a very, very brave man. So if we want a history lesson, we can get it from him and many, many others who were actually there, not Eric Holder. What we want to know from Eric Holder, who's the United States Attorney General, is about how he's managing the Justice Department. It is a huge and crucially important responsibility. And he's surrounded by radicals of his choosing and Obama's choosing. And there does appear to be a pattern here, does there not? And why is he trying to massively increase the budget and staff at the Civil Rights Division? Are there widespread civil rights violations going on in this country? I'm just curious, because I just heard the man say, you can't compare this to the 1960s. Okay, then what do we compare it to? And he's right about that, by the way. I've been arguing that all along. We're nothing like we were 50 years ago. And yet, some on the left want to keep bringing it up. Eric Holder just brought it up to tell us we're nothing like we were 50 years ago, but I need a massive new increase in the Civil Rights Division. Why? So they can punish more states to try and protect themselves? That's the new civil rights issue? Just curious.